Recently, Sony came out and said that they don't have enough original IP, which is already laughable on its own, but it's even more laughable when you play Team Asobi's new game, Astro Bot, a new 3D mascot platformer starring Astro Bot, who could be considered the PS5's mascot in a celebration of PlayStation. And I will just say right off the bat, Astro Bot is everything I wanted and more, and when you play it, you can't help but have a smile on your face. But let's talk about it. Hi guys, DPX here reviewing today, Astro Bot. Now before we get started, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will strand you somewhere in space. Starting off with the good, where to begin? Astro Bot is truly a joy to play, and it nails just about everything it tries to do. I'm dead serious. First off, Astro Bot is a 3D platformer, something we rarely get nowadays if your name isn't Mario, or to a lesser extent Sonic, or to an even lesser extent Crash Bandicoot. But regardless, the platforming in Astro Bot is nice and smooth. On top of that, you fight enemies and it's fine and all, but when the fun comes in, gameplay wise, is with the power-ups. These power-ups come all throughout the game, and they add new dynamics to the gameplay, whether it be, you're able to punch through walls, do like a powerful dash, jump very high, etc. These power-ups really add to the game and the levels. And speaking of which, another thing I loved about Astro Bot is the levels. And more on the levels, it's really the environments that I dug. I mean, first off, it's visually gorgeous, which I'll touch on more later. But each level is oozing with charm and personality, and I just love it. And that leads me to another thing I love about Astro Bot, the charm and personality. Today we see so many AAA games released, and even if they play well and they have cool mechanics and they are overall good games, they could be soulless and just bland and just don't have much character or personality. In Astro Bot, you can get lost in the levels because of how much personality and charm there is, just admiring the game and the levels throughout. And my god, the references and Easter eggs all throughout the game. I almost want to say Astro Bot is like PlayStation's Smash Bros. No, not that one, in the form of a platformer. It's not necessarily a crossover between PlayStation franchises, but just about any franchise or IP closely associated with PlayStation or owned by Sony, spanning from the PS1 all the way to now, has a cameo in the form of a bot. And bots are kind of like collectibles in this game. Each level has a number of hidden bots that you have to rescue, and some are just default generic looking Astro Bots, but others are literally just other video game characters like Kratos, Nathan Drake, Joel, Ellie, Ratchet, Sly Cooper, Solid Snake, Aloy, and I would mention more, but I don't want to spoil the surprise for you. But hearing the list of characters I named, it's not just characters from Sony, it's third parties too. There is one major third party missing, and I'll touch on that a bit later, but characters from Capcom, Konami, Bandai Namco, Sega, Activision, and more just make appearances, and it did nothing but put a smile on my face. And it was so much fun collecting the characters. Each world has like a final boss level that you need a certain amount of bots in order to unlock. Which means that if you don't have enough bots, you have to go back and backtrack and replay certain levels to rescue and collect more bots to unlock the boss level. And normally backtracking could be very annoying in games, but in Astro Bot, it gave me an excuse to replay certain levels and rescue more bots. Then there is also this hub world where you have all the bots you've collected just hanging out, just chilling there, and you got other bots trying to fix a spaceship that's just a giant PS5, which I just love that so much, and the charm and personality that I mentioned earlier is on full display here. I also gotta mention the boss fights, as they are a lot of fun. There might be some jank here and there with the bosses, but overall, they were creative, they were clever, they were thrilling, and they were entertaining. Another thing I want to mention about Astro Bot is how ever since the PS5 came out back in 2020, there has been a meme that the PS5 has no games. And while I don't quite agree with that anymore, even before Astro Bot came out, when they say that the PS5 has no games that aren't also on PS4 or PC, they do kind of have a point, but I don't see Astro Bot coming to PC because of just how well the game utilizes the features of the PS5 and by extension, its controller. That was an odd segue because this is supposed to be about how the game utilizes the functionality of the PS5, but regardless, there are moments in Astro Bot where you use the controller, obviously, but not pressing buttons, but rather the features built into the controller. For example, in the game, Astro flies around in a PS5 controller, almost like, you know, like a plane, spaceship sort of thing, and there are moments in the game where you fly around the controller, plane, ship, but you steer the ship by actually physically moving the controller yourself. There are other times where you have to blow into the mic built into the controller to solve a certain puzzle in the game. Stuff like that, I feel like we haven't gotten too much of on the PS5. As much as I love games like FF7 Rebirth, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, and Spider-Man 2, they don't quite take advantage of the hardware like Astro Bot does. And even beyond just the controller, Astro Bot takes advantage of the haptic feedback, the switching of the environments, the little particle effects, better than any other game on the PS5. So if you are one of those people who have been wanting a PS5 but haven't had a reason to get one, maybe because you get most of your games on PC or whatnot, Astro Bot is your reason. The music in this game is also really nice. It's exactly the correct type of music you would expect from a game like this. And lastly, I love the simplicity of Astro Bot. And what do I mean by that? Well, Astro Bot is doing what Nintendo has been doing with Mario for years, but arguably, and only time will tell with what I'm about to say, but arguably better. I'm not sure if Astro Bot is a better game than games like Mario Galaxy or Odyssey, but the fact that I'm throwing out the possibility should speak volumes. But it's a simple platformer to get into. It's not quite a walk in the park, but I would not call this game difficult at all. Astro Bot is more about putting a smile on your face and having fun, and I think it succeeds in that regard tenfold. Moving on to the mixed aspects of Astro Bot, these are things that I probably won't deduct points for, but they are worth mentioning. And I say words like they and these as if I have multiple things in the mixed category, but it's just one thing. I mentioned earlier about how every third-party publisher closely associated with PlayStation over the years has characters in Astro Bot except for one. Well, and I guess this might be a spoiler, but I'm spoiling what's not in the game. So, but regardless, Square Enix is weirdly absent. It's ultimately not that big of a deal, but Final Fantasy, especially 7, was synonymous with the PS1. FF7 is probably the biggest third-party game on that console. And when you go to the PS2, Kingdom Hearts is synonymous with that console. Neither of those franchises, along with any other from Square, are present in this game at all. I get Square can be stingy, but still, it's, you know, again, I'm kind of rambling about ultimately nothing, but it is a noticeable absence. On to the bad. Look, I enjoyed Astro Bot so much, there wasn't really much I would call bad or even mixed. If I were to call something bad, there are secret levels in the game, and a lot of them were a little too similar to one another, and others were just not that fun. You know, it was like the one time in the game I wasn't quite having fun because there was some stupid shit going on in them. But really, not enough to ruin the game for me. Even though I mentioned one mixed thing and one bad thing, those are minor complaints about a game that had me smiling from ear to ear from beginning to end. It's a huge contrast from Concord, where everything that went down with that game probably encompasses everything wrong with the gaming industry and just video games as a whole right now. And I mentioned that, not to ruin the mood or anything, but because on the flip side, Astro Bot encompasses everything right with gaming right now. We need more games like Astro Bot. Simple yet effective. Small yet satisfying. And an all-out joy to play. Astro Bot isn't only a celebration of PlayStation, it's a celebration of platformers and, to an extent, video games as a whole. So in the end, I give Astro Bot a 10 out of 10. Might be too early to tell to say that this is my favorite PS5 exclusive, because there's still God of War Ragnarok and Rebirth, but look, in terms of being like a PS5 game, like you think of the PS5, you want to think of this game. And on top of that, a possible game of the year for me. I don't know, only time will tell. But that's my review of Astro Bot. What do you guys think? Do you guys like the game, not like the game? Have you guys played it, not played it? And if you haven't played it, you guys want to play it, not want to play it? Anything about the game, let me know down below. Anyways, be sure to like this video, comment, subscribe, or I will strand you in space.